How do you handle it when you cut a toxic person out and you start realizing more and more how awful they really treated you? Remind myself that distance from said person needs to be maintained indefinitely. People like that try to wiggle their way into your life slowly. I always tell my friends, don't let toxic exes or friends follow you on social media, even if they don't try to make direct contact. Their ability to keep tabs on you does you no good. Great advice. I went NC with a friend over 10 years ago and occasionally they still try to weasel their way back into my life. I wrote a long journal entry back when I initially let go of them to remind myself what it was like being friends with them and why it ended. Anytime I start to think that maybe I'll just at least break NC a little, I go back and read that and remind myself I do not want that in my life again. I love your advice. I've successfully achieved permanent NC with a former platonic friend, but my work is in permanently doing this with a former romantic toxic person. I haven't initiated contact in months, and it does get easier as time of maintaining NC goes by, but at the end of the day, it's about truly trusting myself and my own experience so that I know without a doubt that if he reappears with some new sob story of lies, I won't hesitate to ignore and keep on. That's where the work comes in, getting to that knowing. I found that this feeling is frequently paired with a feeling of loneliness and of desperation that I'll let myself get treated that way. I find the best way to deal with that feeling is to make an effort to remind myself that I'm doing what I can now, and that even though a part of me misses them or feels guilty or whatever, that I'm doing what I have to do. Just remember that you deserve better than that, and that even if you feel lonely for cutting them out now, you'll find more people who treat you the way you should be treated. All you can do is look forward, remember how much better you are, and how much better you're going to be for either cutting this person out or for establishing firm boundaries. I also think that some of us, I guess, especially if you are living in a big city and make acquaintances often, have to remind ourselves that actually quite a lot of people are not very healthy. When I was younger it was my default that everybody is healthy, and now it is my default to wait for them to really show me that they are mentally healthy and kind. Yeah, I felt similarly, not from living in a big city, but from being raised in a really big family. My family was big and loud and selfish and toxic, and it has taken me a really long time to learn that it's not okay to treat family the way they treated me. It's unfortunately quite normal to feel like the odd one out for having pain and sadness. Even though everyone's pain is valid, everyone is dealing with their own problems, and you need to put your own well-being first. I talk alright about everything that I realize. It can be overwhelming to keep all of it inside as it comes. So if you can talk about it with someone that you trust, or write it in a diary, it can help to let it out and make it appear clearer. Also, we need to acknowledge that it is now past, but it is okay to feel affected by it for a while, and it is part of the healing process. I also do this, and when I start missing them I go back and read that stuff as a reminder of how this person made you feel. Having a list of awful things they did to you makes it easy to reject them from your life. Therapy / I cut out 2 toxic friends, and one meh friend that was besties with one of the toxic ones. As I have validating, wonderful friendships now, I regularly have realizations about how much of a toll they took on my overall mental health and self-perspective. I wish them all the best of luck, but it's taken therapy for me to unpack just how insidious some of their thoughts and opinions about me were on how I viewed myself and my value as a friend. Try to identify their toxic views and personality traits so you can avoid people like that in the future before you get invested. I'm so happy that you finally found validating wonderful friendships. I still get anxiety and intrusive thoughts that stemmed from the toxic PPL that left a mark on my life. The negative self-talk and most of my fears when I want to make the smallest decision. I had to reprogram myself. It's hard still. Good friends can be so hard to find, but it's incredibly healing not having to deal with the bad ones anymore. One of my newly married friends is going through a lot of the marriage growing pains my husband and I have gone through. We have the same brain in how we process and approach things, but they are like 2 years behind where we are in our relationship currently, so it's kinda cool to see it wasn't just like an us problem. They were having an issue where they were being overly considerate of their partner and they were upset that the partner wasn't putting in the same level of effort into consideration for them. I told them their feelings are totally valid, but that it might be worth it to sit down with their wife and see if the things they were going out of their way to be considerate about were actually things the wife cared about and not things they picked up for the sake of being nice. In my relationship, when I sat down with my husband, it turned out the things I was being considerate about weren't things that either of us cared for, and I just anxiety picked it up and got frustrated. There was no replication of effort. Had it been my old toxic friends, I would have absolutely been torn apart for daring to say that they might have created the situation themselves, that they had potential for being in the wrong, etc. My new good friend instead heard what I had to say, said that actually made a lot of sense, and when they had a chance to talk with their wife, it turned out I was right and my experience helped them remove a point of contention from their relationship. Immediately after speaking with them, I was so anxious about offering that perspective because I was worried it'd be taken the wrong way, but instead I was thanked, and I literally did not know how to process that or what to do with it. Just always remember, nobody has a right to you. Nobody has a right to make you feel like crap for their benefit. You have the power to say no more, whether it is a friend, a partner or even a family member. We're not put on this planet to make other people's lives easier. Setting good firm boundaries is so important, and people who don't respect that do not care about you, and you always need to know you are so much better without them, and that you deserve good people and things in your life. You won't deliberately step in the same dog poop twist. I'm still not sure how to handle this. I have an ex-friend who actually cut me off after I told her how she was treating me wasn't okay. I'm happier now that she's gone, but sometimes I miss her, and sometimes I look back at our decades-long friendship and realize new ways that she was shitty. Honestly, I commend myself for getting rid of them. It's one thing to know they're toxic and cut them off, but I've had it where I cut people off and find out they were toxic after the fact. Honestly, at first I felt embarrassed, like really embarrassed. I couldn't believe that I let him treat me like that. At the time, I prided myself on not putting up with other people's bullshit, conveniently overlooking the fact that someone who I allowed to get really close to me was doing exactly what I was trying to avoid. I was stuck in an environment where I felt like I couldn't be rid of him because otherwise I'd be lonely. Then the lockdown hit and I realized that I really didn't need him at all. I was still very lonely, but I slowly started making connections with other people who actually respected me, which was extremely refreshing. It hit me that I allowed him to walk all over me, even though he wasn't shit. I wasted so much time over him and allowed him to control my emotions to the point where it deteriorated my relationships with other people. He was just a manipulative person who forced others to feel guilty about circumstances that he created himself. I realized that whenever he contacted me, I would feel extremely anxious about what he would get upset about this time, what new thing he would find to make me feel bad about, or what fight he would pick. I know I deserve better than that. Currently have him blocked on all platforms. And while it is still hard, and I'm ashamed that I still think of him sometimes, I know that soon enough I will be surrounded by people who actually care about me, and it will all be worth it. I've had the same experience with a handful of people in the past few years. Honestly, it just hurts. It hurts that someone you cared for treated you like that. It hurts that you allowed them to treat you like that and failed to stand up for yourself. I think what you're going through is a grieving period for losing sight of yourself. It helps to acknowledge it as a valid grieving period and to let yourself feel things. What helped me was that every time I remember or realize something new that was awful about a past relationship, I rephrase it in my mind as my standards getting higher. The more I'm able to pinpoint what was messed up about the way an old friend or an old lover treated me, the better I can set boundaries in my future relationships. Therapy lol. To get real, I was with a narcissist and he did a number on my mental health. Therapy saved my life. Yeah. TBH, I struggle with this. Like the resentment and anger at how badly I was treated. It's a massive cliche, but I find that with time, it diminishes. I try to just feel thankful I cut them out when I did. You can't go back in time to avoid it, but you're saving yourself so much anguish by making the big decision to eliminate these people. Congratulations to your conviction. We only have today. Enjoy that! Exclamation mark. My best friend is toxic. It's complicated. We still talk to each other, but I've decided to try and let the relationship fizzle out since she's part of my friend group. What I do is keep contact to a minimum and not let conversation get too personal. I don't talk about my day or events, how I'm feeling, or what problems I'm having. I talk to my support about how I'm feeling and how I'm coping. That's my other best friend, separate from the group, and my boyfriend. Both of them have told me multiple times she's toxic, but I kept viewing things through rose-tinted goggles. I wanted to keep the friendship going, but I've realized how toxic and how manipulative, narcissistic, and self-centered she is. She only cares about herself, and she's a hypocrite. I'm happy I'm seeing it now than later. Even though I still talk to her to keep the peace, I'm not letting myself get roped into the friendship. I'm in the same boat. If she texts me paragraphs of complaining about something stupid, my responses have been more along the lines of "yeah, that sounds awful," instead of feeding into it and continuing the conversation. I've been using social distancing as a big excuse to not hang out, and it's been a weight off my shoulders. That sounds exactly like my situation. She complains about everything in her life, including her BF. One of my BF's good friends has not the problem at all. She just wants him to basically serve her 24/7. Social distancing has helped tremendously for me too. The other day, that just made me roll my eyes to the back of my head was when she wanted to sleep over at my house. Question mark? Question mark? During a full lockdown, I explained to her no. She can't because she's not part of my bubble. And I live with two immunocompromised people, 92-year-old grandpa and uncle. And I work in long-term care facilities. Plus my mom would never allow it for obvious reasons. You know what she said to me? Yet she's okay with you working in a high-risk environment. I told her 1. I'm head to toe in PPE. 2. I'm tested weekly. And 3. It's my job. Question mark? Question mark? I was so pissed off. She is supposedly terrified of COVID, but doesn't care if she puts others at risk. Then she whines and tries to gaslight me, so I just put her on silent and didn't reply. She's ridiculous. TBH, I just accept the fact and move on with life. They have been toxic and may have ruined my life to a certain degree, but they are not there to mess up anything anymore. It's like being free after an imaginary weight holding you down. I just walk away and try to forget. I try to fix problems that they have left behind. Fight all urges to contact them. Block them on everything. Don't even let your friends tell you what they are doing. Because at this point, there's nothing they can do or say to actually fix anything. And continuing to speak to them will keep you from healing. Give yourself time to give yourself /closure. You don't need whoever they were. 3. I sometimes get very upset with myself, and I continuously ask myself why did I let him treat me like this / get away with things for so long? But then it makes me realize that I wasn't in the best mental state. I was always depressed when I was with him, and I felt so helpless back then. I've learned so much from that toxic relationship, and little by little I'm learning to forgive myself. I have not, nor do I have any intention of ever forgiving him, because I don't have to. Sometimes I get mad at myself for putting up with so much for so long. But I try to focus on times when that person was a good friend, or a time when she was there for me when I needed it. Helps me remember that I stayed in the friendship because I looked for the best in her, not because I'm an idiot. I know it's easier said than done, but you just have to let it go. The more time you spend thinking about what you should have done differently, the longer it will take for you to get back on your feet and enjoy life again. Honestly, good riddance to anyone who doesn't contribute to your growth and happiness. Be thankful that you recognize the toxicity and had the courage to move on. Many people never do. It only gets better from here. About 3.5 years ago, I broke up with a friend of almost a decade. I had therapy and realized that, while she wasn't a terrible human, she was very toxic to me. She had times of jealousy towards me that I didn't understand during our friendship. I always felt inadequate. She put me down, laughed at me in cruel ways, turned her back on me more than once, and did forgiven her over and over again. Shed wrote awful, untrue things about me on social media, turning many against me, and yet I still forgave her. I went on to help her through her toxic relationships and housed her when one guy kicked her out. She moved to NZ chasing the same man who kicked her out. I had no energy left to help her when he dumped her again and wrote a message to her to end the friendship. She lost her shit, blamed me and told me I was always the problem. That reply solidified my decision and I have never looked back. While shedding that friendship, I realized many other relationships were no longer good for me. It was one of the better decisions of my life. I wish her well but never want to entertain a friendship with her again. Therapy. My ex was pretty abusive, but I had my rose-colored glasses on for the majority of the relationship and didn't think anything of the toxicity and abuse. Once it finally clicked what I was going through and ended the relationship, I just kind of sat back and was like, holy cow, all of this really happened, and I ignored it for so long. Getting everything off my chest in therapy and being able to let go of it helped me move on and helped me find a healthy relationship and a better life. Welp, it takes a ton of therapy, introspection, and more than anything else, time. I was in an abusive relationship last year and it ended last February, and I think I only now would say I'm mostly fully healed and have worked through processing the awful and abusive things this person did to me. I think toxicity and abuse comes in waves. You can realize someone is bad for you, cut them out, think you have a handle on it, and then months or years later, things that you have unconsciously suppressed will come to the surface and you realize that this person has had an effect on you, and it's such a long process. And really time and introspection as well as talking things through with a therapist and loved ones is the only way through the pain. Personally, I spent 2.5 years with an emotionally manipulative immature guy playing mind games with me. Your classic tale. He was funny, charming and sweet in the beginning, and once he got me and I had fallen for him, it's like a complete shift. Jealous, anger, rage, constantly fighting. Him playing with my mind and feelings and my fears in our relationship, plus I was too immature, naive, and scared to let him go. And when it happened and he finally was gone, it felt like a complete piece of my heart had been poopen. Took me months and months to stop crying, feeling pathetic, alone and ashamed. I always thought I had done something wrong to cause it, because he always told me he treated me badly, because I deserved it, belittled me to the point I had no self-worth, and left me a complete mess, while nonetheless making sure to get one last screw from me, and continuing months later to ask me for nudes. I handled it because I took it as a lesson. No one deserves to be treated like trash, and everyone deserves someone who loves them endlessly, someone who will treat them right every day. And I never had that until now. My boyfriend has shown me what a real man treats you like when he truly loves you and wants the best for you. Keep going. Be more confident in yourself, and the way you let people treat you and the people who enter your life are a big part of that. 3. I mostly talked to that person through social media, so I deleted all my social media apps besides YouTube and Netflix, and after a while I just forgot about them, and I noticed how much my mood improved and how unbothered I'm now, with so much less stress in my life. I focus on congratulating myself for learning / self-awareness when I make mistake and can see it. Making mistakes is part of the learning process, so I never feel ashamed to be wrong. I like being wrong about people, jobs, my behaviors, politics, because realizing I was wrong about something means it is past tense. I'm no longer wrong about that. I'd feel grateful that I cut them off and continue to practice self-love. Note I said practice, which takes a lot of work than just saying that you love yourself. I'm having a hard time with this right now. I think BC, my abusive ex, moved on within months of me moving out. I even tried to warn the girl, but she isn't listening. Even though I realize how abusive and toxic he was, I still miss him. I'm a wreck. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I went through a similar time with an ex 2 years ago. He was toxic and emotionally abusive, and started dating someone new before we broke up. And girl, I cried my heart out for him. But I struggled and stuck true to my no contact rule, at times asking my sister for help because I was feeling vulnerable and wanted to reach out to him. And then as the days went by, I cried less and less, until one day I realized how much lighter I was for simply not having that gross energy around me anymore. So grieve, honey. Cry and be a wreck, let yourself hurt. Remember that this is natural as you wean yourself off of someone. But also know that you are free now to do as you please and that you deserve to be loved and cherished, not abused. How to deal if this toxic ex orbits around you. Like, I technically can't say anything how has being abusive and creepy by spreading gossip and having his friends stare and spy while he just stares at me cause we're not friends anymore and not speaking terms really. For me it was very sad because getting that one person out of my life had a knock-on effect and I lost other friendships too. But taking stock in what improved in my life helped. I was no longer tailoring my behavior, became less judgmental, and developed a bullpoop radar that has helped me spot the nasty, manipulative behavior in people earlier. Focus on your growth. It was a mixture of missing them, resenting them, and blaming myself for letting them treat me that way. The best thing to do is just to let the anger out through writing or venting to a trusted friend. Then eventually time will heal you. And when you think back, you realize your experience with them was simply a good lesson, and that they are just plain nothing to you and your life. That's when you have finally moved on. I need help with this too. My ex-boyfriend was emotionally and started to border on becoming physical, so I broke up with him. The more I realized how bad he was, I become angrier. I will just randomly remember an instance every so often where he gaslighted me, lied, belittled me, and I didn't realize it before then. It's helpful to remember that toxic people cause a higher cognitive load. They make you upset and off balance. Without them around taking up your brain space, you start being able to actually properly think about the interactions you've been having with them, instead of spending your time trying to emotionally regulate yourself or worrying about whatever it was they did to make you worry. And of course they're not around to gaslight or distract you. So when you're sitting there wondering, why did I not see this sooner? Why did I put up with that? The answer is it's not a fault with you. They were consuming your energy, and without the quiet and lack of new stress you were literally unable to think it all through. Be thankful you are gone, and learn from the things the relationship has taught you so, to avoid these kinds of people moving forward. The more I think about how poopy they were to me, the happier I am that I ended the friendship. I had moments of guilt in the beginning, but as more time passed and more memories started coming to the surface of how crappy of a friend she was, I felt better about cutting her out of my life. To think that someone loved you, only to realize they were manipulating or abusing you, is a very particular kind of heartbreak. You feel like you let yourself down, on top of all the other trauma and drama, and you'll think you processed it all. Then one day you'll think about something in a new way, and see a past experience with fresh eyes, see new betrayal, and are new inside. It's a bit torturous. I suggest having a ton of grace and patience with your past self. Forgive her for the choices you made before you knew better. Forgive her for the situations she ended up in. She did the best she could with what she had. Forgive her for not seeing what you now see with clear eyes. Now you know better, so you'll do better. But always forgive the girl inside who did the best she could. It was the hope that the person would stop on their own. That's what I regret the most. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.